What's up everyone, my name is Gothix and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be reacting to Uncle Tom Part 2, which is the second part of Uncle Tom Part 1, in case you are really bad at math. Now, just for the record, I've actually already seen this movie. I recently went to the world premiere in Dallas where I got to meet a bunch of people, including a lot of folks that were from the documentary itself. I had a really great time. I'll put the photos up on the screen there so you can take a little look. But I figured that it would be a good idea to react to some of the footage in this film. Not all of it, because I want you to still support this film company, because these documentaries are not cheap to make and they need all the support that they can get. So I'm going to be reacting to some clips that I think are probably the most important focal point when we're talking about how Black people are being used in this country. So in case you're kind of clueless to what I'm talking about, Uncle Tom Part 1, which by the way you can watch for free if you go to uncletom.com, and that movie covers the history and the true story of the Black conservatives in America. Now, Uncle Tom 2, on the other hand, this dives a little bit more deep into communism, and I'm just going to read you a brief summary of what this film is about. So it says that Uncle Tom is an odyssey depicting a gradual demoralization of America through Marxist infiltration of its institutions. This film explores how this deceptive ideology has torn apart the fabric of society while using Black America as its #1 tool for its destruction. Okay, so again, you can watch the Part 1 for free. Go to uncletom.com. And if you want to purchase Uncle Tom 2, you can use my code Gothix and you'll get a discount. I think it's like 30% off. And of course, I get a kickback because, of course, all of us Uncle Toms are grifters and I gotta pay my rent, okay? Anyways, so we're gonna react to this. And if you stick around, I may or may not give away some copies. I may or may not do that. You'll just have to stick around and see. So I have some clips that I'm going to get through, and I just want to preface by saying, when we're talking about communism and Marxism, for those that have been on my channel for a very long time, you've sort of watched this channel go through an evolution, and recently I've been sort of diving into the topics of Christianity. And there's a lot of people that don't see the correlation to what I have been talking about to me talking about religion. We can't talk about Marxism and communism unless we talk about religion. That is a huge part of the conversation. So when it gets down to understanding how our society is crumbling, we're missing a big chunk of the puzzle if we totally avoid talking about God. There are a lot of things in this movie that is very unsettling, and it's going to upset a lot of people. In fact, when I was at the theater, a few people actually walked out. And all I can say, because again, I want you to go and support this company, I want you to buy the film, but all I can say is that there is a buildup in this documentary to get you to a certain point, and that point being that for the most part, everything we were taught about Black history in terms of the civil rights movement was a lie. I'm not going to go over that part of the movie in particular. What I'm going to do is just cover stuff, as I said, that relates to God, because it's an all-encompassing conversation relating to communism, not just how communists use Black people in particular. But I think that if you watch this film, it's gonna mess with your head. Definitely it's gonna mess with your head. So anyways, I'm gonna start this review here, and like I said, at the end we'll do something fun to give away some copies, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. Here we go.
Church was the central point. It was the center point of social gathering, culture, religious activity, everything. Every Sunday, you woke up, you had breakfast with your mom and dad, And then all of us came out of the house at the same time, and we start walking toward Sunday school. Even if you couldn't sing, you're going to be in the youth choir. And then Wednesday, you would go to youth Bible study. And in the summer, you go to church retreat camp. Those were just expected things. And that formed the fundamental basis of the Black community. It was that sense of right and wrong. It was that sense of morality. It was that sense of discipline that we had.
All right, so what you just saw in that clip was basically talking about how if you went back 50, 60 years ago and you took a look at Black America, it was drastically different than how it is now. And they're framing this around the fact that back then, the Black community was deeply religious, okay? Now, this is where a lot of people tend to say, well, you don't need God in order to be a good person. You don't need God in order to have good morals. So the first thing is if you are coming up with your own morals, to what standard are you using to say that your morals are actually good, right? How do you know that? And the other thing people might say is, well, I got my morals from my parents. And to that I say, okay, well, who did your parents get their morals from? Who did they look up to? And we sort of keep working backwards to go full circle to a point where someone in your lineage created their own morals. So how do you know they're actually right? How do you know it's right and wrong? Because realistically, we're kind of just making things up along the way, right? And without a guide, a standard in this argument being the Bible, how do you know that what you actually believe and what you feel and how you live your life is actually right and wrong? How do you know? And the other part that this clip touched on is the fact that a lot of people in the Black community, since they were very religious, they had lots of activities to do. Going to Sunday school, Bible study, church choir. Their whole life revolved around God. Nowadays, what do you see? Everyone's caught up in all kinds of things that have nothing to do about God, and sometimes those things aren't actually good, right? So that's kind of all I wanted to touch on in this particular clip. So let's move along to the next one.
The church was producing hope. It produced within the community a stability of purpose. It held us together. Families were strong. Dad was there. Mom was there. The children were growing up under the influence of a two-parent home. That all changed.
It's not because of racism. It's not because of police brutality. It's not because of slavery. It's not because of Jim Crow. It's not because of white supremacists and white privilege and all that crap they're telling you now. It's because of lack of character.
This the gutter right here, you feel me?
Niggas die for this shit, niggas
die
jail for this shit.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Like, niggas die for this shit.
Penitentiary.
Niggas live for this shit.
Nigga, I'm born and raised.
Niggas in jail for this shit.
TG.
Free
Free all the homies, everybody. Free Lil Dub, Lil Baby Dub.
Black people lost character.
Everybody. Free CG. On the hood, rest in peace to the homegirl.
Look at all the neighborhoods, the communities, the cities where blacks have taken over. When they move into those areas, they're very nice. But by the time the blacks are done with them, crime, homelessness, they don't paint their homes, they don't clean up. It's just become a mess.
We grew up to this shit. Like, ain't nothing.
It's because of lack of family, and most black people today do not believe in God. They believe about him, but they don't believe in him. It wasn't that way when I was growing up, but it's that way today.
So let's unpack the video that we just watched. So you can hear Jesse Lee Peterson narrating, talking about how a lot of black people today don't believe in God. They might believe in the concept of him. They believe that there is some higher power, but they don't actually believe in him. So the Bible actually talks about this and how a lot of people will say, oh, I believe in God. They'll claim that they're a Christian and they'll totally disregard everything that God expects of us. And this is something that I see with a lot of people who get swept up in this sort of new age spirituality. They, especially when they move from Christianity, they're doing it because they didn't want to give up something. They didn't want to change themselves. They didn't want to fully submit themselves to God. So they end up doing sort of like this self-worship thing of like, I am my own God and stuff like that. So when we look at these clips and you can see the street footage where all of these people are talking about, yeah, we live for this shit, man. We out here. This is what we do. This is our life. All this ghetto nonsense. You have to ask yourself, how did the Black community go from very proper to that, right? And I suspect the answer is going to be culture. It's because of culture, right? In the Bible, God talks about how we're not supposed to conform to the patterns of this world. We're supposed to reject culture. Anything that culture expects of us, the popularity, the trends, trying to be accepted by the world, we're supposed to reject all of that. So if you take God out of the picture, you're left with just the world. And now it turns into more of let's focus on everything in our vicinity instead of focusing on God, which is the difference between this culture and 50, 60 years ago, where everyone's attention for the most part was towards God. Now everyone's attention is what's trending on Twitter. Jump on board with every trend, chasing money. You're doing everything that God tells us not to do, which is do not conform to the patterns of this world. So the other thing that this clip talks about is the fact that back then it was very common to have two parents at home, whereas now you see a lot of single parent households, a lot of fatherlessness in the Black community. Why is that? Well, as I said, most people in the Black community, their focal point was God, and God provides a manual for how we're supposed to live our lives. So one of the biggest things that have affected the breakdown of the Black community is the fact that they're not following God's template of what we're supposed to do in terms of finding a husband or a wife, in terms of having children. So in the Bible, it talks about not being unequally yoked with someone, which means that if you are a Christian and you're trying to find a wife, you should be finding another Christian instead of someone that's an atheist, because then once you guys get married, you guys are basically following two totally separate belief systems, right? And that's going to cause problems. So back then they're following that, and then they're also saying, okay, I'm not going to have kids until I get married with this person. So what do we have now? A hookup culture. We have Tinder. We have swipe right and just click and bang, bang, and you're done. And hey, if you get pregnant while you're doing it, you can just abort the kid later. And it's baffling to me that people don't see the correlation here. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to raise a child on your own. However, the likelihood of that kid having problems when they get older is a lot higher than if you were to raise a kid with both the mother and the father. Now, from a biblical perspective, the Bible provides both husbands and wives a manual for how to run their household. So if a child is only getting raised by one parent, they're only getting half of the wisdom that God intended. And as we can see, this is how a lot of kids end up having lack of discipline, lack of direction. They start getting into trouble, running away from home, all kinds of problems that would be, in my opinion, would be resolved if that child was being raised with standards, a consistent standard, and not just people making up their morality as they go. So whenever your professor or your friends, these activists or people in the media try to convince you that the Black community is this way because of white supremacy or white privilege, no, it's because of lack of character. And we get our character from God. Without God, we end up creating our own sense of morality and building our own character and the image that we want. And the end result is a lot of yeah, man, I'm chilling on the block with my homie. Pew pew. Brah. You know, like, listen, I don't speak delinquent, so I don't even know what I just said, but we're left with that.
Why do you need to control education in the Marxist worldview? To supplant Christianity and to replace it with secularism. Applying Darwinian ideas and Marxist ideas to child development and education.
Dumb them now. No.
In Tennessee, there's still a law against teaching the theory of evolution in public schools. That law was tested once in 1925 in the famous monkey trial. Now, the man being tried for his views was schoolteacher John Scopes, who was arrested for teaching Darwin's theory of evolution, that man was descended from monkeys.
The Bible was used in schools all across America to teach values and culture. Bible reading was not something that people felt threatened by.
Mighty God, we acknowledge
his opinion of the Supreme Court decision banning prayer in schools. The president says
the Supreme Court has made a judgment. A good many people obviously will disagree with it. Others will agree with it.
Prayer was ended in school first in 1962. And then 1963, Bible reading.
And I would hope that as a result of this decision that all American parents will intensify their efforts at home.
Would you go to court if you had to pray in school?
Yes.
Yes. Why?
Because some people go to churches.
What?
Because some people aren't religious.
And what does that mean?
And that means that it wouldn't be fair for them to have to pray in school.
When people start talking about taking back the schools or bringing God back to the schools, these are people who are demonstrating their ignorance because government education was founded for the purpose of usurping religion and God.
There is something deeply wrong with our education system, and I didn't realize it until I had my political awakening and stopped believing a lot of these woke ideas. But then once I found God, my eyes were opened even more, and I'm like, yo, the education system has been brainwashing kids for generations. They're playing the long game here. And you know, I remember when I was in the 6th grade, I'll never forget this. There was a moment where, because I heard it from a student, I said, you know what? I'm not going to stand during the Pledge of Allegiance. I didn't know what the flag meant. I didn't understand the privilege I had in America. And so I just decided just to sit and not pledge allegiance. And it's scary that they got me that early. That is nuts to me. So going back to this, the Bible is my source of morality. It is a handbook. Some people like to call it the basic instructions before leaving Earth. And it provides me with values on how I'm supposed to live my life, what I'm supposed to give my attention to, and just all kinds of things that we encounter in our day-to-day. Whenever I have a problem, whenever I'm confused about something, whenever I encounter some obstacle, I go to the Bible. That's what I do. Instead of Googling, no, I go to the Bible. What does God say about this situation? How should I deal with this situation? And that's what it's intended for. So if you take that out of the picture, you're left with, again, people just making things up along the way and hoping that it works. So in the context of communists who want to infiltrate our institutions in America, the most logical way to do that is to get the youth, get them when they're young. So if you know a country is founded on Christian values, what you do is you infiltrate that institution, the education system, and you get them while they're young. I want to say it was Hitler, I believe. He said something to the effect of those who control the youth control the future, or something like that. And he was absolutely right. If you get these kids when they're young, you're able to sort of mold them into the person that you want them to be in the future. And this is why a lot of kids are being taught some really sexually explicit stuff in school. They're learning about gender identity. They're identifying as trans. They're getting all of these surgeries and hormones to change their bodies. And it's because they have infiltrated, these communists have infiltrated our education system, and they're getting to these kids young. If you send your kid off to school for 8 hours a day, there's a chance that all of the values that you've instilled in them is going to be erased. And next thing you know, little Timmy comes home saying, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm trans and I identify as African American." Like, what? And as far as teaching the concept of Darwinism, I kind of laugh at this because it's so interesting, because if we evolved from microorganisms and then monkeys and so on and so forth, we still have to work backwards until we get to the Big Bang, and then we have to account for that. Okay, if the Big Bang was created by X, Y, and Z, where did the X, Y, and Z come from? Where did that come from? And you just keep working back, and there's no explanation for it. I'm having flashbacks as I watch this. When I was in high school, I remember throwing a fit because there was a small group of Christians that would have daily prayer outside of the school in front of the American flag. And I was so upset. So I went in there with my pentagram and my platform boots. And I'm just like, I was such a bigot back then. And it's like, okay, what does prayer actually mean? Prayer is taking a moment to give thanks to your creator and to seek guidance and wisdom, and just having a moment, just you and your creator. And I don't see what's so wrong about that. And it's crazy that back then I was so angry about it. It's weird. All right, let's continue.
Images are powerful. You look on churches, powerful images of saints and figures from the Bible, and the goal to communicate the meta-narrative of Scripture, who we are, why we're here, what's wrong with the world, and how can what is wrong be made right. Your worldview, your religion answers those questions. What we're seeing today is another religion communicating another meta-narrative and another worldview. And these murals are the stained glass windows of this new religion.
Absolutely, 100% correct. What people fail to realize when they say that religion is nonsense, or specifically Christianity is a cult, I hear that a lot in my comments, is what these people don't quite grasp is that every single person, no exceptions, worships something, whether they realize it or not. Some people worship money. Some people worship popularity, acceptance, themselves, their identity. Some people worship their skin color, which we saw with these murals of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And this is what we saw during the Black Lives Matter riots, is a bunch of people who were already worshiping their identity and their skin color as a black person in America. They then started to worship this idea of Black Lives Matter. And what happened when people said, "I don't support Black Lives Matter"? You're racist. You're a bigot. You hate black people. Very militant, right? It's like they're protecting their God being the idea of Black Lives Matter, which we know Black Lives Matter is it's not what people thought it was. So there seems to be a reason that people didn't support it, but I digress. In any case, the reason that religion got so big is because a lot of people were already worshiping themselves. They worship the idea that they are a black person, and as a result, throw all of their support behind a movement that worships their blackness. How did we get here? In the Bible, this is what it says: "For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek, for the same Lord is the Lord of all, bestowing his riches on all who call on him." So, if these people actually believed in God and followed God, they would see themselves equal to the white man. to the Asians, to everyone. They would all be the same under God. So going back earlier when I said I refuse to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, when I was doing that, I was saying that I am not included. But the Pledge of Allegiance, what does it say? One nation under God. This is why it is very problematic that government buildings are flying Black Lives Matter or pride flags. And what they're saying is that these people were never included. They're not the same under God. And that is a big problem. So in regards to these murals, they're trying to invoke a certain emotion to build this narrative that worshiping skin color is the new religion. And when we think about the people that were at the forefront of these Black Lives Matter riots, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, there was a bunch of people. But these individuals, it's unfortunate that they died, but these individuals were not upstanding citizens. When this was all happening, I remember talking to a friend that I used to know who said that he ended up going to the George Floyd site to kneel. Why? Why are you kneeling for this man? Why were the Democrats kneeling? Why were the activists kneeling? That is a form of worship. I don't kneel for man. I kneel for God. So it is a new religion. So when someone says, "Oh, Christianity, that's a cult," what do you think this is? Hello?
Fuck you, fucking white people. Racist. Racist. We love abortion. Racist. We love abortion. God isn't real. God isn't real.
As those children become adults, they are naturally going to shift the trajectory of our country to fit this more egalitarian, collectivist worldview.
Say his name, George Floyd. Say his name, George Floyd.
We're seeing the outworkings. We're seeing the fruit of this ideology, and it's doing what it was designed to do.
The fruit of an educational system that has totally destroyed our country. You're seeing the impact of Marxian ideas, the impact of secular humanism in the schools.
All right, so in this clip, they're talking about how we're seeing the fruit of Marxian ideas. We're seeing the fruit of the education system and how it's been brainwashing people. What that means is we're seeing the result, right? So in the Bible, it talks about how you will know Christians by their fruit. So if someone just pretends to be a Christian, but they're acting like the people that we just saw in this video, we will know that they're lying because their fruit is not matching to what we should expect of a Christian. These people think that they're actually doing good, doing all this, and I love killing babies and all that stuff. Like it's demented, and they don't realize it, but this is the result of getting kids when they're young and molding them. So then you can say, wrong is right and right is wrong, and next thing you know, you're worshiping criminals. Like it's so backwards. But again, this is the world we live in. This is crazy, man. I never in my life would think I would see this. Never, never, never.
Manning Johnson was an American Negro who loved his country, and he loved it enough that he saw beyond Uncle Tom. A communist of stature within the international conspiracy, Manning Johnson had the strength to renounce communism when he discovered for certain that its purpose was to use the Negro as a device to help commit all Americans of all colors to a slavery far worse than anything the pre-emancipation American Negro had ever experienced. We preserve the speech on this record for posterity, and we present it with malice toward none, but rather with the belief that had its wisdom and sheer logic reached enough Americans at the time the speech was made, the communists never could have succeeded in provoking the violence and insurrection we have unhappily witnessed. Now, Manning Johnson.
Don't spread the rumor throughout the world that Negroes are kept in ignorance because of prejudiced white people and all of that propaganda. Because that type of propaganda is the brainchild of the communists. And they want to use the Negro to gain foothold in those parts of the world where the darker races exist. They don't give a tinker's damn about a Negro. There are certain people who are using the Negro in order to establish that power in Washington. And the Negro is just merely a pawn in a game that's bigger than he is.
Black people were always ripe for use by the communists because many of us do come from situations of poverty.
I'm going to be praying for you. I'm going to be coming back to see you. And we are going to be demanding when we go to Washington that something be done and done immediately.
You remember when I said in the beginning of this video that Uncle Tom 2 is going to really expose some unsettling truths? Watch the movie. But let me just stop really quick because you can hear Carol Swain talking about how Black people have always been ripe for the communist because a lot of Black people have come from poverty. In communism, the tactic that they use is to create a system of the haves and the haves not. So remember, communism is essentially a class war. It's the capitalists versus the socialists. It's the do-it-yourselfers versus the people that say they can't do it themselves. And if you know that you have a big chunk of the population that has already come from poverty, all you have to do is condition them to believe that they can't do it, they can't figure it out on their own, and then that presents an opportunity for you to come in and be the savior, okay? So, again, if we go back in history, right after the end of slavery, Black people were thriving. They had their own businesses. They were doing a lot of amazing things. How did we get from there to the point we're at right now? It's because of victimization. It's you're conditioning people to believe that they can't do something. And that is what the purpose of Black Lives Matter was. It was to help basically to get the engine starting again, because a lot of Black people in America are fine. They can do it. No problems. I can do it. I don't need nothing. I'm fine. But it's to keep that mentality going. So let's continue.
About these conditions. Yes.
We can resonate with the theory that there's someone out there that's responsible for our condition.
I am the mother with 6 kids, 6 children. I live on a plantation in an old piece of house. And my husband work on the plantation. He don't make, but man give him just $8 a day. And I don't have a job, and it's hard for him to make a job with $8 a day and nothing else to go up against. I got one son stopped school because I didn't have the money to buy him fish and clothing he needed to wear, and he just dropped out of school. And part of the time, I don't even know where I'm going to get the next meal for my children.
Many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
It's taking the economic Marxism of Karl Marx and applying it to race relations in a way that whites are the oppressors and minorities, non-whites, they are the oppressed.
Yes, we have to recognize who our major enemy is. The major enemy is not your brother, flesh of your flesh and blood of your blood. The major enemy is the hunky and his institutions of racism. That's the major enemy.
So you hear that? The institutions are the enemy. The white supremacy is the enemy. Sounds very familiar, huh? Yeah. Nothing has changed. They've been, like I said, they've been playing the long game.
And whenever anybody prepares for revolutionary warfare, you constantly concentrate on the major enemy. We're not strong enough to fight.
As early as 1928, the communists declared that the racial differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric. By constantly probing and straining at this one spot, they calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat.
So on this channel, I've spoken extensively about Manning Johnson. I always recommend his book, Color, Communism, and Common Sense. This opened my eyes, and this sort of started to lead me to put together the puzzle pieces when I was trying to understand what the true agenda behind Black Lives Matter was. So I recommend everyone check this out. It's really, really cheap, very quick read. And yeah, so as I was saying earlier, the civil rights movement, as we know it, is not what you think it is. And yeah. Oh man, if you've already seen the movie, let me know in the comments. What did you think of it? What did you think of Uncle Tom 2? So I have one more clip that I want to show you before we close off this video, and it ties into the clip that we just showed with Manning Johnson and how some things were going on in the civil rights movement that may be not what it seems. So let me just play this, and it will speak for itself.
It's essentially based on guerrilla warfare principles, which is you're up against a far more powerful enemy, and you have a very small little army, and you're trying to figure out with this little army that maybe at best is like a flea bite. You know, how do you kill an elephant with flea bites?
We start with the intersection of the Black and Latino community as a strategic alliance that's central to building a broader multiracial left.
This is the father of Black Lives Matter.
Of the Black trans women who have been murdered.
To the extent that Black people are involved, these are useful idiots. These are people who are fronts to carry out the agenda of white Marxists.
If we don't have a base in the Black and Latino community, we can't branch out. You gotta have a strategy, and that's at least my strategy. We don't believe that majority white organizations can be transformative organizations.
Black Lives Matter? It's a white-run organization.
So what you just heard was the brains behind the Black Lives Matter movement. So while everyone was out shouting BLM, say his name and all this stuff, this guy was in the background pulling the puppet strings. This is a white communist that is using Black people as useful idiots. And as you just heard, they needed a Latino and Black base to get it started. Otherwise, they wouldn't have got any traction. And this actually makes sense, because if we consider what we talked about earlier, if a lot of society is already worshiping themselves, worshiping their identity or their skin color, they're going to be more likely to follow a movement that is headed by other people that share that same attribute. So if I'm obsessed with myself being a Black woman, I'm going to naturally go to organizations that are headed by Black women. It's not going to work if it's a bunch of white people, because everything is Black excellence, right? So that's where the term useful idiot comes from, is when you get people that are obsessed with superficial things, you can move them like chess pieces without them even knowing it. They have no idea that they are a part of a much larger game that's at play. And what's at play is basically taking over America, taking over the entire world, dominating the entire world with Marxist ideas, getting rid of God, and making us all slaves to the government, essentially. So this is why I tell people, even if you are not a believer in God, you need to be very careful about saying that God is nonsense, or God is, or Christianity is a cult. If you don't believe in something, then continue not believing in something. You don't have to convince anyone. Because as we saw in the earlier footage, there is a drastic difference from how society was when more people centered their lives around God as opposed to how everything is right now. And so I realized that this conversation in regards to spirituality and Jesus and Christianity might be a little bit weird for some people. Trust me, I used to be agnostic and I used to be like, every time people were talking about God around me. But we cannot have honest dialogue about communism and Marxism, and we can't truly understand what's happening in our society without talking about this topic, because it is a huge part of this topic. It is a big missing piece of the puzzle, and if you just go around it, you're never going to be able to get the full image of what's happening. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. If you did, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and as promised, I'm going to give some of these bad boys away, but, you know, I've been sitting in this chair for a little bit and I'm kind of tired, so, I'm going to just, do this giveaway in the other room, all right? Follow me. Hey guys, how you doing? My name is Ron Dumas, and I'm here to give you one of the greatest giveaways of your lifetime. Are you guys ready? Did you enjoy that Uncle Tom review? Well, lucky for you, we're giving away 2 copies of Uncle Tom Part 2 on DVD. I'll also throw in a limited edition Democrats kneeling and kente cloths for you to hang on your fireplace mantle. That's right, folks. This can be yours for the low, low price of free. All you have to do is comment below the most ridiculous thing that you've heard keeps black people from succeeding. What is it? Is it white supremacy? Is it pancake syrup? Is it rice? Is it the ketchup bottle? Is the ketchup bottle oppressing them? What is it exactly? Let me know in the comments below and I will find the most ridiculous answer to give away a copy of this.
Oh, like that?
Like you know how the end of infomercials are like, call 1-888 to get, and usually they have something running in the background.
Yeah. I mean, you could do that, or you can do like, you point your finger, act now. Oh, that looked freaky. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, that, oh no. Yeah, that's weird. Stop it.
Thanks for watching. If you want to keep my grift going, consider picking up some official merch by visiting nosisnos.com/Gothix or joining my locals community at gothix.locals.com for more content. As always, you can help amplify my message by giving this video a thumbs up and by sharing it online with your friends. Until next time.